So I was just inspired to click this video right away because, being an operations manager with the entertainer coach industry, we come up with there's so many different facets of making things work and making things good and, pleasing the client, because we're all here to take care of the client and take care of business. And one of the things Mike and I were talking about was how important it is for an entertainer coach driver to be a chameleon. And that would be, I like what Mike said. He said, know the room.
Yeah, like if you're a comedian,
yeah,
you got to know the room.
Yeah.
So for the entertainer coach driver who wants, and we use the word chameleon.
Yep.
But,
adaptability.
Yeah. So the driver, the key to being the elite chameleon or the driver set apart from others is the ability to recognize and identify your tour and their needs, who they are as people, their character, and what their boundaries are with what they're comfortable with. And
that's on all tours. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a 12-bunk bus driving a crew or a band or an artist bus. This conversation actually came inspired off of a star car driver and a star car tour that's going out, i.e. the main artist on a luxury coach. And I mean, that's the higher end of our industry. And one driver in particular who enjoys his cigars, which I enjoy cigars too, but it's a matter of, like, when I mentioned to the tour manager, I was bragging up the driver and saying, yeah, he's very classy and real nice guy, and you're going to love him, dresses well, loves his cigars, loves the finer things in life. And then he kind of jumped in there and said, well, he's not going to smoke cigars on the bus, is he? And I was thinking in my head, well, I guess I better make sure, because some drivers like to smoke their cigarettes or whatever and lower the windows. But in the time that we're moving into now, more people are health conscious, and there's not, I think the smokers are actually the minorities than the people that don't smoke. And, whether it's weed, whether it's cigarettes, or whether it's cigars, you have to know the room, and especially who's paying the bills, and adjust yourself to that. And so that's what brought this up, is the ability to, I guess I call it peripheral vision, and picking up on social cues and adjusting yourself according to those social cues, which actually comes from emotional intelligence and learning more of the industry.
Yeah, identify your boundaries that you want to work within. And I was having a great conversation with another awesome driver just a little bit ago, and we were talking about those boundaries. And when you're talking about being on a long-term lease contract compared to a general population bus, when you're on a general population bus, you're going to go from one tour for 3 weeks to the next tour for 2 weeks. So you have to identify the boundaries of each tour.
Right. And that's a skill set in itself.
It is. It's a definite skill. It's an art. And then you would become that character for that tour and nail it, right? But then if it's maybe a character you're not super comfortable with, or you're not like, hey, this isn't really work for me, it's okay, because you're going to go on to the next tour, and then you'll figure out who they are as people and blend with them. Now, if you're on a long-term lease, or if you're on a star car for 6 months, that's when you have to really decide, can I fit within these boundaries?
Right.
And if you can't, then we have to kind of have a conversation and make a change or whatever. Or if you're on a long-term lease that goes for the entire year, that would be a challenge. Unless you're super awesome at that skill, at creating that character that can work within those boundaries.
Right. What do you think are ways that, like, say you have two different people, one person that has grown up that way and has very good social boundaries, and then the person that has to actually work on those social boundaries, and taking constructive criticism and cues. Well, how do you think that we have to, or what are the best tools to use in order to make those people get it? Because I know you've worked with a couple, and that's why I was asking that, because there are a couple of drivers in our family here that Mike's doing a really good job of working with. I mean, they're not at that perfect level yet, but they're, and sometimes they slide down, because, and anytime you give constructive criticism, it some people feel like they have to defend themselves, which I get. That's just part of being human. But if you want to excel at a customer service driven industry like this is, and you're actually living with the people and constantly with them like 58-day tour, you're basically with those people for 58 days on a run. How do you adjust yourself? How do you pick up those cues? Do you let the tour manager know and work with the tour manager? Maybe that's a solution, is the office working with the group leader or the lead driver out on a tour and say, hey, here are some of the things that this person needs to work on. Let's try and help them.
I think it's important to, as a person, as a driver, this it works, and it only works if you are humble and open to the suggestions of your peers or coworkers or others. And if you're the type of person that's humble enough to reflect and be open-minded and make observations.
What I notice sometimes, though, when we're working with some of these people in particular, I think of myself, I was going to say listening is one of the most important things, but I do notice that some of them do listen, but they don't absorb.
Sure.
You know, it's like speed reading a book, but you don't absorb the content. You don't really absorb what it is trying to convey.
So then you would want to say, listen with intent. Like,
I like
listen
that.
With
Listen with intent
to act on.
Right. Well, it's almost like listening to, they say, you know, like, or reading the Bible, they've said this before, like when you read the Bible and you read it where you're actually living inside that, like every chapter, you're actually an observer within it, that what you're doing is actually planting a seed so that it grows, right? And with information. So if someone's giving you constructive criticism on a tour or mannerisms of a tour or policies and procedures to follow, it's actually not just listening to what the persons are telling you or reading what they're telling you, but absorbing what you're reading and being told and planting it as a seed. Like, you may not change your actions right away, but maybe in a year, you'll notice a subtle change that you become more like, oh, I'm not walking into the production office to bug them.
Sure.
I'll go ask the lead guy, hey, here's an issue I got.
And if you're humble, again, I really think a lot goes back to humility. If you're humble, again, you're the kind of person that just keeps trying and keeps reflecting. And
So hopefully you get something out of this. Learn to listen and learn to absorb. And the other thing, when we were talking about, there was an example of a driver who, you know, is on a long-term tour and didn't know, and he was late for the pickup because he was waiting for the tour manager to give him information, when in reality it should have been proactive 2-3 days prior. It's like, if you don't have that information, don't just wait for it. Reach out, send an email, send a text. Hey, just wanted to double check. So there's a sense of like empowerment and proactivity. You know, and make your questions, make them short, and make the questions poignant, that they're actually relevant to what it is you're trying to do.
And one of the things I love about that conversation is that I love it when a driver receives that information and says, yeah, I hear you.
Right.
And duly noted.
Right. And not just the duly noted, I want to see the actions from it.
Sure.
So, like, because, you know, actions speak louder than words. You can nod your head and say, yeah, you get it. And then if you continue the same way you've been doing it, which would be incorrect or in error, then you're not really listening or absorbing. When you really listen and absorb and you change your actions to adapt to what it is that's positive, taking out of whatever the criticism was, then that's the truth of a good character, that you really care, that you want to get better and be the best that you can be, because that's what Platinum CDL drivers are all about. There you go. So hopefully you enjoyed this a little bit.
Yeah, this will make a good podcast.
Oh yeah, I know.